Memphis track boy, let's go.
My Colorado swing. My Colorado swing. My Colorado swing.
Welcome into a new BuffStampede Radio. Adam Munsterteiger, the publisher of BuffStampede.com, joined again by football analyst William Gardner, back on our Sunday time slot here. And it's kind of this quiet period right now, William. You've got this break where the guys get to go home, the players get to go home and catch their breath. The recruiting staff is still working their tails off, but some of the coaches will get a break here and there. So not quite as much news, but before you know it, we'll be getting into the summer grind.
And I guess we ought to warn people. We're going to talk about football. That that thing they do on the grass, where they got a ball and they put on pads. We're going to talk about that and football players. So not about the drama. So I don't know. Probably people don't want to watch because it's about football. So you've been warned.
2 more weeks, these guys are going to get a break, and I think, especially when you go to a bowl game, these guys need that breather, because I don't think you can do this 12 months out of the year without having burnout. It's a lot that's put on these guys. So you hope they're working out on their own, and then when they come back, I think that really shows the staff who was fully bought in, right, in terms of that first week of workouts, because you can really tell who continued to maintain their stamina during that time.
Well, and they have to have, you cycle through different periods of working out, and there has to be breaks in there too, because you don't make progress when you're lifting. Conversely, you make progress when you take breaks, when everything rebuilds and builds up stronger and better. So, and it's science, it's all based on the science of observing, what kind of responses the human body has to workouts and such like that. So, and I'm sure at CU they've got it down to a science, and it's all about periods and whatever. And there are times when you take a week off because you need it for your body.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they have guidance as to what they're supposed to do during this time period from Swayze and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, I think and frankly, if this is what you do and you're an athlete of this caliber, you stay in shape and you work out. Which is kind of funny, because back in my day when I graduated from high school in '82, and back in the '70s, there was no off-season conditioning. They showed up at training camp and they got in shape, and NFL guys smoked cigarettes and drank beer and a whole. It's just so different now,
It's so much easier to maintain it, though, than it is to get it back, right? I mean, that's a toll on the human body when you're constantly kind of going through that.
Well, what's a toll on the human body is being 60 years old. Talk about getting it back. It ain't as easy as it used to be, but yeah, I think it certainly is. That it's almost like the binge and fast and sort of back and forth. You're I don't know. There's a trade-off, because if you're working all the time, there's a load on the joints and the ligaments and whatever. But yeah, I think it's harder to build over the long haul if you're taking long breaks off, and that's why you see the level of athleticism in athletes now is so much better than it was 40 years ago.
Summer school starts at CU on June 2nd, so the players will be back. Usually they get back on campus around that Memorial Day weekend and kind of start getting back into the mix. I applied for the Big 12 Media Day credentials in Frisco, Texas. That's going to be July 8th and 9th. The Buffs are going to be there on the 9th, and I'll be out there both days. It looks like it's going to be that to me is always kind of getting back into work mode, is doing the research on all these other Big 12 teams and getting a chance to kind of preview the upcoming season. That's less than 2 months away. So it's not long before we're going to be getting into this. And then obviously preseason football practices always begin at the very end of July or right at the beginning of August. Circling back, I wanted to go through some guys that earned their degree from the University of Colorado Boulder earlier this month. We're talking a lot about the high school recruiting at that point and didn't mention this, but I kind of wanted to circle back and go through some of these names because there's some good stories throughout here. Let's start offensive lineman Khalil Benson. He graduated with a degree in sociology. Of course, he's gone back to Indiana this year. I think we wanted Khalil Benson to be more consistent, to be a full-time starter, but there were times that his grit really kind of endeared you to him as a player, right? I thought that he was always trying his hardest. I never questioned his effort out there.
No, I thought he did a pretty good job. I think he was better at tackle than people give him credit for, and he was certainly at times was very dominant at guard. I don't know. I'm always hesitant to say much about anybody playing the line at CU because I until we string a few seasons together, it's hard for me to say whether the coach is any good. I don't know if Lode Holt's any good yet or not, but I think that he was a guy that gave his all and was all in for the team, and I wish he'd stayed. And I think he ought to get a lot more credit from fans than he does.
Yeah. Linebacker Jeremiah Brown graduated with a degree in geography. Geography. That's geography is more fun than geology. Just my honest opinion.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear what Jeremiah wants to do with that.
I think geography has a lot more job potential, and when you think of like the Forest Service and things like that. But then my godfather was a geologist and spent his career working for the Forest Service as well.
Did he have a personality?
Yeah, he was actually a pretty interesting guy.
Okay. All right.
He had one foot that was all messed up because he accidentally stepped in a hot pot at Yellowstone. But
yeah,
and he actually knew Harrison Schmitt was an astronaut that went to the moon who was a geologist, and I got to meet him once.
Oh, very cool
connection. So geographers don't get to go to the moon; geologists do, apparently.
The governor, Camden Dempsey, got a degree in finance and marketing. I think he's going to do just fine in life. I think he's going to do. I noticed he was over in Japan with his mother here recently. That was cool to see him getting that break. Kicker Jace Feely, psychology. Tight end Sam Hart, who hit the portal, organizational leadership, master's degree. So he played the system pretty well. Went to Ohio State, Colorado. Has a bachelor's and a master's. So that's a good way to leverage your football talents. Linebacker Isaac Hurtado, who was not with the program recently, but stayed at CU, began his career. Not began his career. He was a JUCO transfer into Colorado, but was with the football team and then decided just to focus on getting a double major, one in sociology, the other in leadership and community engagement. Offensive lineman what's up?
Well, I don't know. I'm just thinking of some of the titles of some of these things, like organizational management. Isn't that an oxymoron? Don't they both mean the same thing? And then what was the last one you just said?
Engagement.
Or no, there was a two-word or
organizational leadership.
Yeah. Okay.
And leadership and community. Well, the organizational leadership is a master's degree. The leadership and community engagement is a bachelor's degree. That work?
Right. Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah.
Well, here we go. Justin Mayers, offensive lineman, organizational leadership master's degree for him. A guy that's back this year, Amari McNeil, got his degree already with sociology. So I think sometimes when they get that bachelor's, the next step of it, you're not quite as intense with these online master's programs. And I think it can kind of help you, focus in a little bit more on football sometimes. So we'll see there. Edge Samuel Okunlola got a degree in psychology. Tight end Eric Olson, who was with the football team was actually their top ranked recruit. What is that now? 4 years ago, decided just to focus on academics, and it worked out for him. William, mechanical engineering for Eric Olson. Look at that.
I could have done that. I could have done engineering if it wasn't for the math.
Eric was one of the nicest kids to interview, but you left those interviews going, yeah, he's smarter than me. I know it. There's been some of those guys over the years where it's like, okay, you're not worried about them in life. Kicker Cristiano Palazzo, integrative physiology. He's actually going to go off to be a firefighter. It's cool that Colorado has kind of an in with the fire departments here locally. Walk-on tight end Anthony Posadas, political science major, got his degree. Shiloh Sanders, organizational leadership master's degree. And then two more here. Punter Mark Bassett, sociology. I don't know. Did you see that Mark Bassett got picked up in the Canadian Football League? He was a second-round pick.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me though.
Yeah.
I think he'll do some kicking in one of the two leagues for sure.
But it was a big sense of relief for him because due to the visas and all that stuff, if he wasn't going to be working professionally as a football player, he was going to have to go back home. And I think he was just really enjoying this experience.
Yeah, because it'd be sucked to be shipped back to that brutal regime in Australia.
And safety Trevor Woods got his degree in accounting. So Trevor Woods and Camden Dempsey are going to be quite the financial team here going forward in life.
I got to go to Australia a couple times in the Navy, but we can't talk about that on a family show.
Is there one story you can share?
All I will say is that they were very friendly. It was a beautiful place, and they were just super friendly, and they were so outgoing and welcoming to us. And when you went there, you didn't have to stay in motels, and people took you home and let you stay at their house. And just was really
people took you home. Now I get why we can't talk about it on the podcast.
Yeah, well, you had to take that next step. So, I'm just gonna say Australian women really like American dudes, or they did in the early '90s.
What's interesting though is we're so enamored by their accents. What do we sound like to them?
Well, so it's funny. I was in South Africa, and they have a very particular accent that I can always recognize. But I would remember that I was there with a close friend who was living there at the time, and he had an next door neighbor who was from Texas, and he had a deep Southern drawl, like really, really had that Southern drawl. And that guy and myself were talking to some other South African people, and they were saying, you two sound exactly the same. I'm like, no, we don't.
Really? Wow.
They thought we sounded exactly the same. And I was like, wow, all right. So I don't know. We didn't sound like them, I guess, is what it comes down to.
That's like a great example of just people's perspective is different, right?
But it's also but it's interesting, like in England, there is a difference between somebody who's from London and somebody who's from other places. That there's different sort of accents that go in different places in England. So I would think you would hear it, but I guess not.
Well, William, you said we were going to talk about football, so I guess we got to get.
We're talking accents in Australia and my Navy adventures. Okay, so get on board, sit down, and enjoy
it. Fair enough. Today's episode is brought to us by Macaulay Capital Fractional CFO Services. Is your business looking for financial guidance and support, but not yet big enough to hire a full-time CFO? Well, we have a solution for you. Hiring a fractional CFO who can work with your business on a part-time basis. You get the benefit of having a seasoned financial expert on your team without the commitment or expense of a full-time hire. And here's the best part. It's likely that a partnership with Macaulay Capital will be a win-win situation, meaning that your business will make more money from the guidance of a fractional CFO than the total cost of partnering with us. For more information or to set up a meeting, please visit MacaulayCapital.com. That's MCCAULEY Capital.com. William, everybody that listens to our podcast knows that we love the Hungry Toad. They've been bringing a taste of England to Boulder since 1991. At the Hungry Toad, they serve up hearty homemade fare from their scratch kitchen paired with a brilliant selection of British beers. They're the perfect spot for friends and family to gather, relax, and enjoy the warm, welcoming atmosphere. If you're mad for football, so are they. Whether it's the American gridiron or European footy, they proudly support CU football and CU women's soccer. The Hungry Toad, Boulder's local pub that's not on Pearl Street. Head to 2543 Broadway in Boulder.
And you know what? Hans Serrata don't take no whoopings either. He hands them out. How's that for a second?
I love it. Gavin Mueller, a tight end from Illinois, picked the Colorado Buffaloes over some other prestigious opportunities last week. Live announcement on 24/7 Sports. We like to do film room features on the guys that we really like that commit to the Buffs. This is their first high school pledge for 2026, but there's not a real full highlight reel out there for Gavin Mueller. This is a former track athlete, a basketball player. I thought that might hurt his exposure a little bit, not putting out more film, but he certainly had enough options. Have you been able to kind of gather enough thoughts on Gavin Mueller to feel like you have a strong impression of what he's going to bring to the Buffs?
I think Gavin Mueller is as complete a tight end as we've seen at CU. I mean, aside from we just picked one up in the transfer portal this year, but he coming out of high school, he's as complete a sort of tight end as we've seen in a long time. And what's like 6'5", 260-ish, really runs well. And part of the problem we have with trying to put together a highlight reel is half of his huddle page is basketball. It's like, well, that's not really helpful in this context, but it does give you some idea of his athleticism. But he's also big enough to be, a good inline blocker. And no, I don't think he's going to turn into a tight end because he's far too athletic for that. And I think he's a guy that can run downfield and create mismatches for you. And I think he's a guy who will be ready early, but he's also very new to football, so he's going to be pretty raw, and we'll have to learn a lot of the technique. Sometimes that's a good thing. He hadn't learned a bunch of bad things that have to be untaught, as one of our former offensive line coaches said once famously. And in between 6 Big Macs, I'm guessing, for that particular coach. But I digress. I think Gavin Mueller is a guy that's going to really make a difference on this team very, very quickly. And of course, that remains to be seen how he ends up using the tight end this year. But there's certainly a renewed interest in the position in recruiting. And I think it was close between us and LSU, and he kind of had looks from some really big schools and ended up coming to CU.
Great job done by Brett Bartolone recruiting him. He saw him before his visit out to Colorado. Gavin Mueller took 2 trips out to Colorado. I don't think the plan was for him to take 2. I think he was coming out the first time just to see what it looked like. And then even after that official visit, another visit, from Brett Bartolone. And they're lucky during these contact periods, they can kind of put a little bit more of that full court pressure, or not pressure, just interest into a recruit. And I think that really paid off, because I think you're right. I think LSU was probably locked in. I think Wisconsin was number 2, and Colorado was kind of, on the outside looking in until he spent a lot of quality time in Boulder, and it really changed things for him.
And I'm sure they had to sell him on that we're going to use the tight end, because we really haven't all that much in the last couple of years. And so I'm sure he had to sit down with Shermer and take a look at do some whiteboard stuff and talk about what they're going to do in this offense. So they probably had to sell him on that as well. But I think once you meet Prime and get to Boulder, we got a lot to sell for this place. And I get that, unlike a lot of other people, I don't believe it's all about the bag. It is for some guys, but I don't think that's primarily the thing for a lot of the guys that Coach Prime wants to have play here. So that recruiting and that connection that they make when they get them in town and put the full court pressure on them, as you put it, is incredibly important to me. And so I don't need to hear the whining from some people about, oh, we got to get more NIL money. We just got to do our thing, and we get great players like this, because I think he's an outstanding guy, and we took him away from some top programs.
Mueller was at Wheaton St. Francis his first year playing organized football. He's going to be at South Elgin as a senior. Mentioned his background in track and field, 10-foot broad jump, and he's got a 6'11" wingspan. There's a video of him doing the vertical leap the other day with his team, and they need to get a taller vertical tester in there, don't they?
Yeah, and I think high jump and long jump are really measurements of power and explosiveness, and I don't think people mostly know that. And so that bodes well for him as a blocker, but also, obviously talks about his ability to go up and get a ball in traffic and things like that. But I think he's really a tight end, and I wonder how long it'll be before somebody tries to say, let's move him to offensive tackle. But I really think this is a Dan Graham sort of tight end, or Kloppenstein, or those guys who can really get things for you down the middle against linebackers and even safeties, and because he's going to be way too big for the traditional defensive back and way too fast and athletic for the traditional linebacker. So it gives you some options with a guy his size.
Yeah, it's interesting because Gavin Mueller and Zane D'Souza are not really all that different in terms of just their weight at this point. But you look at one, and to your point, I think you say Mueller is, going to stay at tight end and really thrive in that role. D'Souza wants to play tight end through college. I think he just doesn't know that he's an offensive tackle yet.
Although, when we watched him play, he doesn't block all that great. So we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, he's got some development to do, so we'll see how that pans out with him in the future. Andre Roy Jr. picks the Buffs as a transfer from Maryland, started 7 games there at left tackle last season, saw action in some other games there at Maryland. This was not a guy that maybe you're going to pencil in as a starter right now, but he started games at a program in the Big Ten last year. So yet another guy you're bringing into the mix that has some of that experience going against top level competition.
Yeah, and I think he's a guy at 6'6", 300, and I think he'll be easily get. I bet by the time the season comes around, he's 310 or more. He immediately provides the backup we need for Seton, and I guess could conceivably be in the mix for the right tackle spot as well. And that's a spot. How do you back up a Seton, Jordan Seton for a couple of years, right? Well, you bring in a guy who's got a couple of years left and can envision being the guy that takes Seton's place, I guess, and then can also fit in at the right tackle, whatever. But starting 7 games in the Big Ten is not something to sneeze at. That's a legitimate thing, and so I think he's an excellent pickup and brings more competition to the line. And God forbid if anything happens to Jordan Seton, now we've got a legit left tackle who's played that position against some of the best competition there is at this level. So
yeah,
right off the bat, having played 7 games, starting 7 games for Maryland, that he's played against he's probably played against better guys than he'll see in our conference. So
a lot of weeks, yeah.
Yeah, and then not every week, but that just is an exciting pickup to me. And if that doesn't satisfy people at tackle, I don't know what the hell we got to do.
Yeah. So the Buffs now have 14 scholarship offensive linemen committed to play with them this season. 6 of those are transfer additions this offseason. I'm going to throw this question to you, and it's going to segue into another question here that's more bigger picture, William. But if I gave you the list of those 6 guys that transferred in from other colleges this offseason and said, would you take this back when the 2024 season ended? Would you take this collective group with the Zy Chryslers and Amani Taimanu and all these guys that they brought in that group of 6?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. And the thing is, you said, and I'm looking at the chart right now, the eligibility chart, and looking at the 14 guys. Every single one of those 14 guys has a chance to figure in this year. So, it used to be back in the day, you'd have 14 to 18, but 2 or 3 of those would be true freshmen that weren't going to play that much, But like our true freshmen this year, Chauncey Gooden and Carday Smith both have a chance to do something. I think with the addition of Andre Roy, that gives Carday Smith some time to develop, and the same, with Larry Johnson also at tackle. And so I have a hard time I have to say, in terms of talent and depth, we're better on the offensive line. Will they play better? Damned if I know, man. That's on the 3-headed coaching trio there at offensive line to put the right guys in the right positions and get them there. But I think we have a lot more size than we had the last 2 years. I think we have more athleticism. I think we have more experience. And again, I go back to the fact that 2 guys that started quite a few games for us in the last 2 years, Tyler Brown and Kareem Harden, I'm not sure if they're in the conversation this year. So, I think it's certainly an upgrade. And some of them we haven't. I'm really looking forward to seeing Aki Ogun be healthy and get out there. I'm looking forward to seeing Larry Johnson, and some of these guys like Zy Chrysler and Xavier Hill inside. I'm very excited to see what they do, because those guys look like maulers to me, and I think Atia is one of the guys of the future for sure. get lots of snaps at that center position. We'll have our center this year, assuming it's Zarian McGill, will be significantly bigger and more experienced than anybody we've started at center for the last 3-4 years, I guess, now that I think about it.
Yeah. Aki is going to be first off the bus. That young man is massive. Like,
Yeah.
Usually before the spring game, I'm looking down with my binoculars, trying to kind of take stock of every position. Like, Aki was like completely on the other end of Folsom Field, and I could make out, his facial expressions. Like, he is just such a big dude.
Yeah, he's truly massive, and Zy Chrysler's a massive guy, but he's got a very entirely different body than Bogenby and Larry Johnson's another one. I mean, the size they brought in this year, I guess Coach Prime got tired of not being big enough, because we're big enough now. I'd be surprised if we don't have the biggest line in the nation this year.
That was the tough part about Cash Cleveland, is that, I think he'll go down to where's he going? Texas Tech. He's going to go there and probably do fine. But like, to earmark that position to someone of his size for the next 3 years, when you're having ambitions to get in the college football playoff, to me that seemed like a bit of a stretch. And that's nothing against him. There's a reason that he was a walk-on, but he's overachieved, and certainly it's been very admirable, kind of just how much his teammates love him, and the attitude he shows up to practice with every day. But we all kind of have this ceiling in certain aspects, right? And with his frame, I just don't know if you could have expected or wanted him to be the starting center for the next 3 years.
It's hard to say, because I know it's been a long time, but back around the late '80s, for God's sakes, I'm thinking of our center that we had, whose son played at Mountain Vista, was a linebacker for us up here.
Norgard,
Eric Norgard. Was listed 6 foot 300. I don't know if Eric was 6 foot, but he lasted 10 years in the NFL, right? You just never know. Now that's a fluke, and you don't want to measure people.
It's also the 80s too, right? I think now I don't know if you can get away with that.
I don't know if you can or not, but I can name you, like Aaron Donald. He wasn't 6 foot, but one of the best defensive tackles in the league. And again, you can't measure things by the outliers and the freaks and the guys who overcome that size. So I have to still say Cash Cleveland was a pretty damn good center last year. And I have yet to see any of the people that talking the trash about him and hate showing me some film. Put the film up.
No, yeah, I don't think anybody's debating that. I think the question is what's the ceiling there, right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and I get that, and I don't. I mean, he made his choice. I think he was falling down the depth chart, but I'm also going to give the guy credit that he did a pretty damn good job last year and stepped, in a situation as a true freshman, walk on, and got the job done for us.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I think that's a guy that Colorado fans are going to cheer for when they're not playing the Red Raiders. Like, I don't think there's any animosity or ill will there at all. So you've already said this before. You're not predicting Colorado's going to have a good offensive line until you see it, but you feel good about these 6 transfers that are coming in on the position. You feel good about that position overall. What about the team overall? Because we know, and we've already seen some of this, that the outsiders, the national prognosticators, they're going to say Colorado lost Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. They're going to basically be in rebuilding mode. This is going to be at best a bowl team, at best 6-win team, because you're already starting to hear some of that chatter. I've always felt these 3 years under Deion Sanders that the national floor of this team has been so much lower than it actually is. And the ceiling has always been not to just Cash Cleveland, but for Colorado is that, it's harder to predict that. You wanted to talk about this question, so I'm going to just throw it to you. Are the Buffaloes better than last year or not?
Well, there's a lot of variables there, man. And I've said several times already, I think in terms of roster, I think we're better. I think the only positions where we have a question mark are inside linebacker and running back. But are we better? That comes down to the coaches, man. You know what? And really, it comes down to one guy, and that's Shermer. Although I think there's still a big question mark on the three offensive line coaches and how they do. But in terms of the talent on this team, I think that I think we're significantly better. Now again, what will the coaches do with Caden Salter and Julian Lewis and Ryan Staub, at quarterback? And the automatic thing that people outside of Boulder who don't know anything about this team are going to say, well, you're going to have a fall off without Shedeur Sanders. I don't know. Maybe we change the offense and we don't miss a beat, because Caden Salter brings a very different set of tools to the game than Shedeur Sanders does. Now, wide receiver, given that we had three guys drafted, I'm going to say that I think we just rebuilt and we're fine, given what we have there. And I think we got some guys in that group that'll get drafted at some point. So I think we're going to be fine at wide receiver. I think tight end is better. I think the offensive line is better. I think the defensive line is better. I think the edge doesn't have the depth, but some of the frontline guys are. I'd like to see some more edge guys, but I think we look pretty good there. And then inside linebacker, we got some guys that have the potential, but it'd be foolish to say that we are better right now at linebacker than we were last year until they prove it. So I think the key thing for the defense is the defensive coordinator, is Livingston. That he's going to find a way, I think, to make these guys into a potent defense, and I think we'll have a really potent pass rush. And I think we're going to have I think we're going to have a front five that's pretty much immovable. Frankly, I think we got a significant upgrade in the middle of this defensive line that reminds me of like back in the '90s. With those guys. So, are we a better team? That remains to be seen. And how well will they come together? Will they play together? What kind of what will the offense be? I think defensively we got a chance to be pretty damn good. I think offensively we do too, but I don't know what our identity is going to be.
That's as good. Yeah, that's as good a breakdown as you can get. To me, like if the linebacker play is close to the level it was last year, then I think this defense is going to be really good. But
yeah,
I don't know if that's going to be the case right now. I like Martavius French and some of the things that we've seen from him, and I like some of those other guys in that room, but it kind of goes back to the disappointment from the portal of just not getting another, quality, starter at that position, obviously running back as well. I think that this team's floor and ceiling are the same as I felt this team's floor and ceiling were a year ago at this time. It just is going to look differently.
Right.
And that's the thing that I think a lot of people that don't cover the program or follow it closely are just going to have a hard time accepting or wrapping their heads around, is because they're just going to assume that, you lose a Heisman Trophy candidate, that, things are going to fall apart. But, there are some frustrating parts of this offseason. Just a couple areas you would have liked to see, improved a little bit more. But I think this offense could score as many points this year if they can find that balance. If Caden Salter can be the guy we saw at Liberty, if he can be, step up. We heard that there was disciplinary action, and that's the reason that he didn't start the spring game. So he's got to see this opportunity and really just take ownership of it.
Right, and focus and put in the preparation and be ready to go and own this team and take charge. But we got guys. If Jaheim Otis and Anquan Barnes hit their level of potential, and if Amari McNeil continues the fairly linear progression that he's done each of the last 2 years, people won't be able to block our defensive line, and those linebackers at the very least won't have to avoid blocks, and they can just do their job and run free. But I think this defensive line is gonna create problems for people in a big way, and
it kind of reminds me of when Utah joined the Pac-12 and everybody was like, they're not going to be able to compete at this level. This is a former Mountain West program, but their D-line play was the best in the conference every year, and as a result, they were one of the best teams in the conference every year.
Right. And you have those guys that disrupt your blocking schemes, get in the backfield. It's hard to run the offense, man.
Yeah.
So I think that's the key position to me on this team. I like the addition at running back of DeKalen Taylor with that speed and breakaway stuff. And I'm still a little bit skeptical about Dallin Hayden, but everybody says he's going to reach that potential that's in the program. And I still like Micah Wells. I'd like to see another guy there, but that is what it is. We've shown that we can be very successful with a wide receiver heavy offense, and now with Zach Atkins and Savell Smalls, I think we have two legitimate guys at tight end that we can use. So I think there's options for this team. And I think there's a possibility to be pretty good, pretty damn good, and I still think 9 to 10 wins is realistic.
It's frustrating that Isaiah Augusta left because I would have really enjoyed watching him run that RPO game with Caden Salter. But I'm actually I'm less worried about running back than linebacker just because I think I mentioned this on last week's show. I think Draylon Miller and Cam Michael could be fine running backs in a pinch. Linebacker, though, is such a specific position that if they start getting some injuries there,
there's only 5 guys on scholarship at the position right now, and I'm trying to look and see if there's anybody else that can sort of play there. I know there's hints of Quincy Wiggins standing up, but I don't think he could play a linebacker, although maybe in certain run situations. But I'm just trying to think who could step in there if we got some injury problems. So hopefully that won't happen because we're really thin there, and really I would say only French has proven anything to me at this point.
Yeah, I think Reginald Hughes is going to be a pretty good player, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that position. Well, I guess Keaton Wade did some different linebacker stuff last year, wasn't he? Kind of in that Trevor Woods role at times in third down situations.
But it's he's one I think that could play because he certainly played some inside stuff and certainly could be an inside backer type guy who could get things done. And Kylan Salter, Kylan, I'm not sure. Kylan Salter, he came from a Big 12 team, so he certainly, other people think he has talent to play at this level. Will it all come together and can be ready? And I think Jeremiah Brown has shown flashes every year he's been here. So, that if it all comes together for him, it's all great too. But Mantrez Walker's the player for the future. Don't know if he'll be ready this year, but I have confidence that Livingston will figure something out, and even if you have to go with one linebacker and do something different, there's different things you can do to cover up for one position.
I went through recently and listed off all the offers that have gone out by Colorado during this current May contact period. And it's a lot of 2027 recruits, some new 2026 targets, even some early 2028 targets. Any guys on that list that stood out to you as you were looking through it?
Well, it's almost the opposite. Who doesn't stand out, frankly,
right.
given the level we're back at recruiting. And I think a couple things that stood out to me is we're back in California heavily, clearly, and we're back on the poly kids who quite often end up being excellent players. So those are two things that are nice to see. D'Amato Pecco looks like he's getting his work in, but I
wonder how much time he's watched film, because it's pretty incredible the amount of evaluations and offers that have gone out through him.
Yeah, and you look at the defensive tackles. I mean, there's some exciting guys. The two his kid Joe Pecco to me is at 6'3", 310 is a pretty exciting guy. But then Lex Malanzi and I'm gonna just screw these names up, these poly kids, and Manoa Faupusa, I think. I mean, Manoa Faupusa, I watching his film and looking at his size kind of blew my mind. I'm like, holy crap, look at this guy. He's another D'Amato Pecco, for Christ's sakes.
Yeah.
And Lex Malanzi, I think maybe it looks like he's 30, for Christ's sakes. 6'3", 340. Faupusa is 6'2", 310. And we're back to recruiting the kind of defensive tackles that you need to have to be a playoff team. So it's exciting to see that. And then there's those are the three defensive tackles that really jumped out at me. There's some guys that I don't know if they're realistic or not, but a Xavier Griffin at linebacker, KJ Edwards at running back. I think we got to get a blue chip running back in this class, if not two. KJ Edwards would be my top choice there. Noah Roberts is nice looking, but Cedarian Morgan, I don't know if that's realistic or not at wide receiver, but we just had 3 wide receivers drafted. Ought to be a pretty good selling point,
Yeah.
And the offensive lineman, Jake Cruel is the one edge that jumps out to me as being both really good and really interested. But the offensive lineman, I mean, damn, they got like 20 really good offensive linemen. If we get 4 of them, we're solid. We almost can't go wrong whichever any of the 3 are that we get. The 2 in-state guys, and I'm including Colajay as an in-state guy, even though he's at IMG Academy, and him and Deacon Smith's freaking huge. He's an old school sort of 6'5", 320-pound guard, that we used to have, and Johnny Jones at offensive tackle. Felix Ojo is the Jordan Seaton of this year's class, and I don't know how realistic it is to get him, but Johnny Jones looks interested, and he's an outstanding tackle. And I could just go down the list of offensive linemen that they're after, and really give me almost any 3 of them, and I'll be happy with it.
Yeah, I hope Deacon Schmidt is either uncommitted or committed to Colorado when his season kicks off, because I'd love to go up to Windsor with you and watch his season opener if we can.
Yeah, hopefully knock some people around, but I think there's that Janiver Carr. I'm sure I'm not getting that first name right, but he's a really exciting looking inside lineman, interior offensive lineman. But there's just a lot of guys out there. I think I could just go down the list and I could talk to you about each one of them. Here's what's great about this guy, and there's only a handful of them that I'm not real excited about, frankly. The kid they just offered from Kent Denver, that big offensive tackle.
Yeah.
That's not a bad looking guy.
Yeah.
Now that's an even lower level of Colorado football. But that's a big kid that can move, an offensive tackle, 6'6", just a 280-ish kind of a guy. So, I think the other thing I think, we see D'Amato Pecco being mentioned by a lot of guys, but all these big offensive linemen mentioning Coach White, so he's out there doing his work too, I would say.
Yep. Trip Skews is the guy from Kent, Denver, and apparently his mother went to school there, so he didn't do the go to Valor or Cherry Creek thing, and maybe the competition isn't quite as great as a result, but he's definitely seen his stock take off here.
Being a Colorado kid, and knowing Kent Denver all these years, Trip sounds like the name of a kid that would go to Kent Denver to me. But one of my best friends that I worked with in my office for years, his wife teaches at Kent Denver, and his son is actually a 6'8" offensive tackle on the football team. Probably doesn't have a future. Now his dad, who's my friend, has a silver medal in rowing from the '82 Olympics, so he's a hell of an athlete. But I'm not sure August is going to be a football player. But
okay,
I do have a connection to Kent Denver, so we can get down there, and plus it's about 3 minutes from where I live. So
perfect. Let's do that as well. You mentioned Xavier Griffin, the linebacker from Georgia that was committed to USC recently, got back on the market. It is too early to know exactly what Colorado's chances are there, but it does sound like they're going to, be part of the mix there. So that would be huge. Juju Johnson, a 4-star cornerback from Long Beach Poly, 10.5 in the 100-meter dash type guy. And so, there you go down these and you start watching the highlights, and you understand why they have as many offers as they do.
Yeah. Like Tavon Epps is a linebacker currently committed to Texas, and we offered him, so we must think there's some possibility. But there's another guy. I mean,
You never know what's going to happen at these other spots. Position coach leaves, and so yeah, you can't let a verbal commitment scare you off from an offer. That's for sure.
And there's quite a few guys we're looking at that have offered, that have committed within our conference. So getting those guys is kind of a double win.
Yeah.
But this is, and it cuts two ways, because this is the sort of exciting recruiting, that built these kinds of sites that we're on, and they got people excited. But at the same time, these are kids that are not going to come in and bazinga, commit on their visit, because they're going to go to other places,
Yeah.
So people have to have some patience there. And some of the, we didn't get any commits on this weekend, we must not have done a good job. Well, that's kind of goofy. If you don't want to play at the high levels, then you're going to have to get used to this.
You mentioned that Domata son is a high school recruit. His other son, Domata Jr., I had a chance to talk to him, and there's a feature on BuffStampede.com. If you haven't had a chance to read it, it's a free story, so you can pop on there. He had a lot of praise for Robert Livingston in that story, and obviously Domata Jr. is more of kind of an edge pass rush guy than his dad was back during his playing days. He's going to be a mid-year graduate from Ventura College this winter. And he's ranked pretty highly early on. I think it's junior college rankings are kind of hard to put together at this point, just because a lot of those guys, you don't know who's going to emerge quite yet. But it's good to have him on board as well. So he and Gavin Mueller are the two 2026 commits right now.
And I think that'll blow up, and we'll start to see those guys happen over the summer and start to commit. But again, if you sign 15 to 20 guys out of this list of guys, man, you're going to be just fine.
Yeah. CU announced their summer. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking, there's no filler in this. There's not the guys we used to do reach offers on and hope and a prayer or whatever. This is a damn solid list from top to bottom.
Yeah, they did do some reaches late after the signing days the past couple of years, and unfortunately a lot of those young men just have not panned out. Atia, I was an exception there.
But there's no harm in it, because
it's true.
They just leave now. You're not stuck with them for 5 years. So at this point, that you got those available, and you see a guy, you may take a flyer on him. Let's see if it works out. If it doesn't, there's no harm, like there used to be. It was like they used to. Who, I don't know, was it Saban maybe, or one of those top coaches used to say, it's the mistakes you make in recruiting that hurt you. The ones that you're stuck with. And nowadays, you don't got to be stuck with them.
And they're at 72 scholarships, so it's not like they're having issues as far as the numbers go. CU announced their summer camp schedule. They're going to start with a postgraduate camp on June 3rd, an elite camp on June 5th. That'll be the one that has the most news coming out of it in terms of offers. There was the Woolney kid, the big tight end, that's originally from Colorado, that's in Florida. They got an offer from Colorado at that camp last year. That's when they discovered Zane D'Souza and some other guys at that elite camp last year. They're going to do their youth camp June 10th and 11th. Their women's clinic, which is a cool event, on June 12th. The primetime 7-on-7 Classic on June 18th, in conjunction with the Buffalo Elite 5 versus 5 lineman camp on June 18th, as well as the CU Football Specialist Camp on June 18th. And then I'm sure some of these coaches will go out to some of those satellite camps where they bring in guys to, like a lower level college, and you've got a lot of different schools represented at those. So camp season is just around the corner as well. But that has changed so much, William. It used to be you could be a senior to be with no offers, go out to a camp and get an offer. And you can still get that now, but generally, if you don't have an offer by the time you're hitting the summer camps, it's more kind of like about that junior class, that sophomore class with these camps now. It's not to say it can't happen. It just doesn't happen nearly as much as it used to. It used to be like there'd be 5 or 6 guys that Colorado would sign in a given high school class that would be discovered at these camps.
I was just thinking that you mentioned the 5-on-5 lineman camp, and imagine you're a high school lineman, you get to come here. If you're a defensive lineman and get coached by Warren Sapp and D'Amato Pecco, and if you're an offensive lineman, you get coached by Andre Giroux. hey, can we just sit and listen to stories about the NFL?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so the season opener against Georgia Tech is going to kick off at 6 p.m. That got announced since our last show as well. That definitely made me smile, William. Us old guys, we need naps if it's going to be any later than that, I think.
Yeah, and that's a good timing. It's going to be rough for traffic, I think. On a rush hour on a Friday, but I think people, let's be honest, most people are going to be up there getting lubricated most of the afternoon for that one.
That might be the morning that you develop a cough.
Yeah,
and then it mysteriously goes away by noon.
Yeah. I don't have that luxury on Fridays. I got to be there. Damn guy in a robe seems to think it's important that I show up, but I certainly can get that. So I think that's going to be an interesting game, and I think we'll be fun to see that early in the evening, and good time.
Yeah, campus is going to be a mess that day, no doubt. It's going to be all about handling that aggravation until you get in your seats at Folsom Field, and then I think the excitement of the year 3 of the Coach Prime era kicking off is going to be exciting, and that's a Power 4 opponent. So this is going to get the eyes of the nation again.
Yeah, and I think you just get an early start and plan on making an early start and get up there a little early and then tailgate or whatever it is you do, and don't nope. If you rush it and you get pissed off, that's on you, I guess. If you make a plan, stick by it.
Yeah. Well, this was a fun show, William. We said we were going to stick to football. We only veered a couple times. We did okay.
Yeah, because you didn't poke me with a stick and push the buttons and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, well, we gotta.
Last week you pushed all my buttons, and he's like, "I'm just a bystander, just a bystander. I'm just a bystander."
I would have to review the tape, but I really don't feel like I had to do much pushing last week.
Well, there's certain things that just bring. I guess it's like the Hulk. It doesn't take much to bring the green guy out, I guess.
Well, we kept the green guy away for this show, so we hope everybody out there enjoys it. William, let's try to do this again next week if we can.
We will do it. I'll see you
All right.
later.
Sounds good, and appreciate everybody out there for tuning in.